of 10 safer in school. They're going to have better mental health if they're with their peers and able to engage in school activities. And there seems to be a bit of a vicious cycle at the moment of children being out of school, higher levels of anxiety about attending school, and then feeding into further non-attendance. That's something that we absolutely need to break.
I do apologise to Mr Walker there. We're taking you to Southwark Crown Court. We're listening to Detective Superintendent Helen Rance from Metropolitan Police. Let's have a listen.
TJ Fletcher was a founder and administrator of iSpoof, a website which sold other fraudsters tools to deceive and scam thousands of victims in the UK and across the world. Through the website, criminals bought the services provided by Fletcher to commit fraud on an industrial scale, resulting in total losses of more than £43 million to the victims in the UK alone. Fraud is not a victimless crime, and the cost to the many victims in this case has not just been financial. It has also had a huge emotional impact, causing extreme distress and devastation to those affected, many of whom had their bank accounts emptied and their life savings stolen from them. This was a complex and challenging case, and I would like to thank the Metropolitan Police and the many national and international law enforcement partners who worked with the CPS to secure the evidence for us to present in court. We were able to show how Fletcher was instrumental in the setting up of the website and how it gave people the tools to defraud others. We will continue to work with investigators to prosecute the fraudsters who used the website, and we will be pursuing confiscation proceedings against Fletcher to recover the money he made from his criminality. We hope that this case will encourage all of those who think that they've been the victim of the fraud to report it to police or to actual fraud. Every report can help prevent another person become a victim and enable us to prosecute offenders. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name's Helen Rance and I'm a Detective Superintendent in the Met Police leading the Cybercrime Unit. Today's result and sentence is the result of a long and complex investigation. By creating iSpoof, Fletcher enabled a gateway for thousands of criminals to defraud innocent victims out of millions of pounds. Before it was shut down, iSpoof was constantly growing, with 700 new users registering every week, and it was earning £80,000 per week. Fletcher was leading an extravagant lifestyle, benefiting from the profits, having no care for the misery he was responsible for. He would often go abroad for long periods of time, and he owned luxury cars and watches. Our wider investigation into the suspected users of iSpoof continue. In the UK, we have now arrested 169 individuals, and we're gathering evidence against them. Work is ongoing to identify many more. This was the UK's largest ever proactive fraud investigation. I'd like to thank our partners who have assisted us, including the CPS, the City of London Police, the National Crime Agency, the Cyber Defence Alliance, international law enforcement, and many, many others. This operation was the first time we have proactively targeted fraud on such a large scale. Our proactivity to target cyber-enabled fraud in this way will continue. Thank you.
Well, statements there from both the Metropolitan Police Detective Superintendent and the Deputy Chief Crown Prosecutor, Kate Anderson, on the day that TJ Fletcher, seen there on your screen, was sentenced to more than 13 years for masterminding iSpoof. We can just give you a little bit more background on this case. Well, TJ Fletcher conned victims, not just in the UK, but across the world, out of more than £100 million. 43 million of that was from people in the UK. And that meant that out of the 10 million fraudulent calls made worldwide, around a third were in the UK. That's about 3.5 million. At its peak, the website had over 59,000 users. That's meaning that up to 20 people per minute were targeted by callers who were using technology from the company. Well, joining me now to give some insight to this is Jake Moore. He's a cybersecurity expert. Jake, good to see you this afternoon. We were hearing there from the detective superintendent from the Metropolitan Police. This was the largest ever fraud case investigated. It's a long, complex investigation, drawing in many different bodies, including international law enforcement. Just give us a sense of the complexities of investigating this.
Yeah, so first of all, this is a very impressive investigation. I take my hat off to all those involved. This is a huge global operation, and like we just heard, the largest fraud investigation that's ever taken place in the UK. This is so difficult to investigate. The fact that he's pleaded guilty, that highlights how incredible the police have worked together to get the evidence. I've worked in digital forensics units in the police force. Getting that evidence is very tricky, as with the tools available, such as the dark web, VPN services. Getting that evidence is so tricky. So a testament to them to get a guilty plea out of this.
And just give us a bit more of an idea of what the scam actually involved. Now, he had a website, didn't he, that he charged people to access, and it enabled them to get hold of technology so that they could make these phone calls. So just tell us a bit more.
Yes, so iSpoof allowed people to make caller IDs appear to be from legitimate companies, such as your bank. You've probably heard of these types of scams before, and they defraud the victims into tricking them into moving their money or providing sensitive information, such as banking passwords, and then those criminals can do that. And it all starts with the dark web, actually, or that the amount of personal information that may have been compromised once before, that's sold on the dark web or it's given away for free. And using that personal data, scam callers can convince those people to move the money into another bank account. They believe they're moving it to secure it, but of course they've just moved it straight into the criminals' accounts. And then unfortunately, most of the time they don't see that money again.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, now that TJ Fletcher has been sentenced to prison, presumably, you know, the money's gone. I was reading that one of the victims lost several £1 million.
Yeah, the amount of money here is huge. And that's really why the police have targeted this service. And we tend to see these kind of services appear on dark web websites and on Telegram. But we rarely see an open website, such as any website that you can just enter on a normal browser, such as Chrome, for example. So this has really pointed the police to really target them. The huge amounts of money involved here has made them go after them. And luckily, they've got this far with it. Usually, we don't tend to see the case turn out so fortuitous for the CPS and the police.
And because people were divulging information, passwords, etc., legally, it means that they are liable for their own losses, doesn't it? Even if they've been duped into giving that information.
No, not always. So this is where the police and the banks work together. This is called authorised push payment fraud, where you've been forced, coerced, manipulated into handing over that information because they do believe that they are speaking to the legitimate companies and banks. You know, when the number comes up, and you're able to then Google that number, and they'll even say to you, look, if you don't believe us, give it a quick search and you'll see that this number is actually the right number. And of course, that's when people let their guard down, and then they are completely puppeteered into handing over credentials because they believe they're at risk if they don't do that. And that's where people should, of course, take those extra few minutes, even hang up on if they believe it is the bank, and take a few minutes to actually think, what are they doing? And are they being asked to do something quickly, which they normally wouldn't?
And he was paid by a lot of the criminals who wanted to access this technology, paid him in Bitcoin. Presumably that made it harder for the police to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, of course, that's the favorite currency for cyber criminals. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, which just make it far, far more difficult for the investigators to go and follow the money. It's not like the old days. The Economic Crime Unit would just see the money go from bank account to bank account. Using digital currencies such as Bitcoin, it makes it nearly impossible to follow it. And then I think the only way they were able to get to the victims was by to target the website and with those numbers listed essentially in a database, to then text all those numbers to see if they were actually victims of crime, of which they then found many people.
All right, Jake Moore, fascinating to get your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, air rage is